Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. I hope you're doing very, very well today. And I am here with a special guest to talk about one of our favorite times of year. Hunter is here to talk about the National Book Award Long List for Fiction with me again. Welcome, Hunter.
Thank you for having me. I think I'm doing, they tell you it's like there's those 50-year-old plus men who they hold the camera down like this and they take the really unflattering. That's what I'm doing now. But
you know what? Bookish opinions can come from any angle that, it is what it is. But I think you look fantastic. We are very happy to have you back. We have done this now. We did this last year, right? Did we do this the year before too?
We did. Mm-hmm.
So this is our third year talking about the National Book Award.
Yeah.
Oh, and this year definitely threw us for a loop. Lots to talk about. Lots of books that I thought would be there that aren't there. But overall, a pretty exciting list.
Actually, it's funny because technically I predicted, because last year I only got 4 that I actually listed out. This year I listed out 5 of them.
Well, half is better than, I normally have read about half, and this year I had only read 2, which is ridiculous for me. So,
which 2 did you read?
So before it started, I had read The Prophets and I had read Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Okay.
But the list came out on Friday. If you all didn't know, all of the National Book Award long lists were announced last week, and fiction was announced on Friday. Since Friday, I have progressed and I've read 4 more. So I have 6 of them under my belt, and I'm halfway through another one. So,
see, you're like blasting. I have been not reading. That's not true. I did reread Matrix. Well, that's another thing. I reread Matrix this weekend. So So I've basically. Oh, and I've read Intimacies twice too. So I'm rereading the same books instead of reading. It's fine.
Well, and then this is a long list that included a couple of chunky books. So
yeah.
Going to take some dedication. So overall opinions, Hunter, what was your initial reaction to the long list?
I will say there are some that were totally out of left field for me that I was excited about. There were some that I was like, oh, that was the choice that I thought was an obvious choice that you might want to divert from, but okay, we'll do that. And then there's my queen, Lauren Groff, who I'm sure some people are like, oh yeah, she's an obvious, but I don't care. I am always going to be voting. Lauren Groff is my top vote at all times.
Well, I remember when I read The Monsters of Templeton by Lauren Groff when it came out, and she was nobody.
Yeah.
And I said, I loved that book. I loved it. And I was like, this woman is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And we'll get to her book and everything, but she has now been on the long list or short list for her last 3 novels. So,
yeah.
Was there anyone that didn't make the long list that you were truly surprised?
I'm gonna say no, which I feel is kind of controversial, but I will say I was disappointed to see that Milk Blood Heat was not on the long list, but I was excited to see that it was on the 535.
Yes. I really wanted to see Brandon Taylor's Filthy Animals on this list, and he hasn't been given the 535 either, so I feel like the National Book Award is just letting me down in that.
They're giving him the shaft.
And I'm like, he's been shortlisted for the Booker, but can't make it on the National Book Award list. I don't know what that is about. So
I'm gonna say something controversial yet brave, which is that I think Real Life would have had a better shot making it this year than last year.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. But overall, the list is pretty eclectic, but interestingly enough, there's a lot of when we'll talk about this as we go through, but a lot of first person narratives, a lot of one point of view or epic family saga or epic saga. So it's very interesting, that dichotomy. So, well, we don't want to be here all day. Should we talk about the books that made the list, Hunter?
I'm ready.
So we're just going to talk about them in alphabetical order by author's last name. That's how they were announced from the National Book Foundation. And we're going to go through and we'll sort of let you know which ones we've read, which ones we haven't read, and sort of our feelings about them having been on here. And the first one is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. Have you read anything by Anthony Doerr?
Okay, confession. I read like 60% of All the Light We Cannot See and did not love it, so I put it down.
So I read All the Light We Could Not See, and I'm just not a big World War II person. So to me, that didn't speak to me. His short story collection is very, very good. But so this is a book told in 3 parts. One part takes place in the 1400s in Constantinople, right? Am I right? Yes, in Constantinople. We have 2 characters there, a young woman who works in a sewing house, and a young man who is taken from a farm by a man who wants to conquer Constantinople. We have a modern time story. We have an 80-year-old man who is working in a library, putting on a play about a book, and a young man who is trying to blow up a building next door. And then we have this futuristic tale of this young woman on a spaceship who is being contained because of a breakout. And all of this wraps around this original Greek text that sort of weaves its way through all 3 narratives. I have already reviewed this book on my channel. I have already told everybody I loved this book. But it is the first chunkster on this list. This is like over 600 pages.
Yeah, I have not finished this one. I've only just I started it and then I restarted it because I don't know why, but like if I start a book and I don't get 100 pages in, I kind of forget where I'm at. Yeah. But I'm intrigued by this one more than I was All the Light We Cannot See. And I also forget, because All the Light We Cannot See was on the short list for the National Book Award, but Redeployment won that year for that. But he won the Pulitzer.
The Pulitzer, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are actually some very big names on this long list. I think that this is such a departure for him from what he's put out in the past. So I'm really excited. I also often forget that Anthony Doerr is American. For some reason, I always think he's British, but he lives in Idaho. So he's like old fat, good Idaho, middle America. But I love this book and I'm excited to see it here. I'm interested because it's so different than everything else on the list.
Well, I will say it's not a book I thought it might have a chance, but it's not one I listed out. But I think, so Charles Yu, who won last year for Interior Chinatown, was one of the judges. And this one to me, it seemed like a very interesting book, stylistically, structurally, on a formal level. And so like I think that that kind of stuff is what probably him, and even Margaret Wilkerson Sexton, I believe, was also a judge. And I think that she does things that are interesting with form. So I think that's makes sense for this. Yeah.
Well, and we will talk about a book that's on the list later, which is the only book I had not heard of. But then I saw that Charles Yu had blurbed it. So I was like, oh, so it was already in his mind. So, okay. Well, I'm just going to sort of turn the next book over to you because, you are sort of the Instagram queen of the fan club of Miss Lauren Groff.
Yeah.
And her new book, Matrix, which just came out, actually. And I'm a huge Lauren Groff fan. I totally support her being everywhere. And I like that this blurb tells us absolutely nothing about the book. So tell us what we need to know.
I mean, all you really need to know is that it is a book that takes place in the 12th century, and it's about nuns. And okay, I will also say, like, this could be potentially a little bit spoiler, but not really. There is there is some sexual content in this book that like had me clutching my pearls, and I was obsessed.
So I am obsessed with books about nuns. I think that they are fascinating, fascinating characters. And so I'm so excited to see what Lauren Groff does with that. So is this one told from, so I really noticed that a lot of these books are told from like a one person perspective, or they're very family or, saga-esque. Is this one told from a single person's perspective, or is it more other people too involved?
It's pretty close on Marie de France. It's pretty close on her, and it's from like, and but it does span like a great deal of time. And it does include like little bits and pieces from like of what is it? Aquitaine.
Oh, okay.
I cannot Eleanor of Aquitaine. Yeah. There's other.
I like that she did that. That's gonna be cool.
Yeah. It is really fat. It's actually also a very, I'm gonna say, joyful. Like it is like, I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that like in my mind everything has felt so dark that like maybe it's not as joyful as I think it is, but like if you've been living in this world that we've been living in, it feels very joyful in comparison.
Okay. Well, to put you on the spot, Hunter, of all of Lauren's books, where does this rate?
I think that on a, like, technically speaking, I think that it is on par with, I think that her last three books, the ones that have all been on the long list, at least for the National Book Award, I think they're all pretty equal in different ways. I will say that my favorite still is Fates and Furies, and then next is Florida. This is not my personal favorite. However, this has some of my favorite lines that she's ever written.
Oh, see, there you go. Well, I am really excited to get to this one because I also am a huge Lauren, not as huge as you. Can people, I know that you interviewed her for Riverhead. Can people still find that online?
I don't know. Listen, I have no information. I'm useless. All I will say is that she dressed as a nun at the end of the interview. For anyone who has not seen it, she dressed as a nun at the end of the interview. And because I did not have a habit, I just took a t-shirt and threw it on my head and started speaking in a mid-Atlantic type, like little Edie-esque accent. And she was living for it. And she's also just very kind. Listen, I'm not saying that people should win things just for being very kind, but she is very kind. I won't spend forever talking about her, but like I do worship at the altar of Lauren Groff. So
well, and you know what? We all have those authors that just speak to us, and she's yours, so that's pretty fantastic. Let's move on to really the only small independent press book I think on this list. All of the other books are from bigger publishers, I think. This is from Graywolf.
Yeah.
And this is Abundance by Jakob Guanzon. So had you heard of this before the long list came out?
No, and it's so I'm really mad at myself for not, because I tend to keep an eye out for Graywolf's books, because I really do think that they have a lot of like, I mean, they had In the Dream House with Carmen
Marie Machado.
Yes, and they had a book that came out a couple of years ago, like 2018, called Some Hell by Patrick Nathan, that I loved. So they've got some great ones.
Yeah. So I actually have had this on my shelf. I got this because I read the starred review in Publisher Weekly. And I actually read this one this weekend. So this is really, really good. So this is the story of a father and a son, and it has to do with money and poverty, and just sort of like that fight to dig out of poverty that is just almost impossible sometimes here in America. And what's really clever is each chapter is actually titled with the amount of money that the father has in his banking account at the time that part of the story is being told. Now, he has just gotten out of prison. I'm not going to tell you why, because it's important into the story arc. And he has his young boy, and they're living in their car. and the wife or the mother has gone away, and it is the young boy's birthday to start, and the dad has splurged on McDonald's and a hotel room, and then something happens, but they are super excited because the dad has an interview the next day to finally get a job, but the world is going to throw everything they can, and it goes back and forth to how the father character met the woman who he winds up having the child with. We get to really, it's a lot about father-son love, and what you're willing to do. But it is heart-wrenching. Money is so difficult to write about sometimes.
Yeah.
And he does it tragically beautifully at the same time.
I'm excited for this one, partly because I'm wondering how it's going to compare to a book that came out last year that was on I can't remember if it was on the short list or not, but that you and I both loved, The Great Offshore Grounds.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it sounds
very different, but still that same sort of earthiness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I will say, so I actually listen to a lot of books while I read them. And this audiobook is really fantastic.
Okay.
So if you are an audiobook reader, this will definitely do it. But I will say Abundance by Jakob Guanzon, fantastic. And I'm saying his last name, how I pronounce it, but I'm not sure if that's right. So I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. But it's so good.
I will just go back real quick and say the audiobook for Matrix is narrated by, it's a British narrator. And I guess it just depends on if you like British narrators or not, if you'll like it. I just get really thrown, I love, I don't know, there's some accents I love. And maybe if it was like Cockney, I'd have liked it, but that it wouldn't fit the book anyway. But
but yeah, so I'm super excited. I always love when a little book that no one's really probably read makes it a list, and this one definitely deserves it. Now that I finished it, I actually think you will quite like it, because he's very clever linguistically and stylistically, and I know that that's something you're sort of drawn to, so I think you'll really like it. So I'm really happy for Jakob. This is his debut novel too.
Okay.
So yeah, he's pretty fun he's very edgy on Instagram. Like, he's sort of fun to pay attention to. So
yeah, that's exciting.
And then, so there are really two books that were not on my radar, but this one at least I had seen, and that is Zorrie by Laird Hunt. And I had seen this book on shelves, but it was not on my radar at all. This is one you haven't read, but did you know about it before?
No, this is I knew nothing about this, although it has really impressive, some of these blurbs are really impressive.
Yes. So this is told from the point of view of Zorrie. She is a woman who we meet at sort of the end of her life, and she's older, and she tells us the story of her life in sort of rural Indiana. And I think there's a blurb on it, but I'm not sure, but it 100% reminds me of Marilyn Robinson's writing.
Okay.
And very much, you know how that small town feel of Olive Kitteridge and Elizabeth Strout, both of those sort of together. And you just sort of, this one woman and all the people in her life on this farm and everyone around her. And it deals with, death. It deals with life. It deals with loneliness. I loved this book. I was so shamed that I had not had it on my shelf yet. It's a Russell book, 100%. I just love books that just do that to me. Beautiful, beautiful.
It sounds really good. I also really like the cover.
Yes. Well, and I have never read it. I never heard of this author, and that never happens. So
I mean, he has 8 novels.
Yes, he is a very handsome man. I'm just going to say that as well. But 8 novels, and he has been around writing for quite some time. So I'm going to be doing some backlist diving. So
I'm
I
excited.
highly recommend that one. It's also a phenomenal audiobook. And
Okay.
so the one book I was a little bit scared of when it popped up because it is so long. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. What do you know about this one, Hunter?
Well, I don't know if you know this. I don't know what any book is about before I start reading it. Um, so I mean, I have an idea. I know it's sweeping, epic, all that stuff. Um, I also I'm gonna be like, I don't like,
Hate it.
yeah.
Hate it. Hate it.
Um, okay, but let me just say, I know people are like scared of this length. This to me, for some reason, I'm always like, oh, good, I'll read that quickly. Because big books, there's something about big books where I get so invested that it almost like makes me read more than a little book will.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't know.
that's interesting. Well, so I don't want to shortchange. I didn't realize. So it's the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honorée Fionn Jeffers, and she was actually longlisted last year for the National Book Award for poetry.
Yeah.
So she is originally a poet. This, I believe, is her debut novel. And you're right, it's a sweeping epic about a young Black woman she lives in the city, but she goes off into Georgia in the South, and she starts to investigate her family history through her maternal line. And she goes back to sort of figure out who she wants to be and where she wants to go. And it also, I mean, Jacqueline Woodson, Dolan Perkins Valdez,
Yeah.
Angie Thomas, Deshaw Philway, and Stephen Powell Watts. It didn't come without a blurb from a pretty impressive names. Like, I pretty much worship the ground that Jacqueline Woodson walks on. So anytime that she suggests something, I'm saving this one to last. I think I will love it. I definitely think I will. But I mean, it's a hefty book.
Yeah, it'll be really good to like help with people's grip strength. So.
You can use it to exercise while you're doing stuff.
But whenever my weights are too heavy for my shoulder workouts, I'll grab 2 big books and start using them.
Do you like a big family saga epic? Is that sort of a trope that you're attracted to?
I guess, yeah, I don't know what it is, but I love a big book that justifies its bigness. I think I read Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead a couple of weeks back.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was like, I know some people wanted to edit it down, but I don't know. It's not as big as this, but it still is like bigger.
So I started that because I was so sure it would be on this list. And so I was like, I'm going to jump ahead. I was so positive we would see it. I'm really, really liking it. Did you know that it was actually 400 pages longer?
Yeah.
So it was over 1,000 pages and they edited it down. But I really like it. But we're not here to talk about what didn't make that. But she's doing well. She's shortlisted for the Booker.
Right.
She's not having a bad day. So, oh goodness. So this next book actually was the first book I read of 2021, and that's The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr.
Mm-hmm.
It was the very first book I picked up to start the year. So I'm happy to see it on here. I was a little surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I liked this book quite a bit, but I didn't know that it had like the gumption for this list, but I really liked it.
I had a feeling it would be like, when I first read it, I thought, oh, this is going to be one of those books I see on the list. I do still really like it. For me, it's been one, I guess that the more I think about it, the more it kind of comes back, but it's just not been one that has been at the forefront of my mind this year. But then again, I will also say hardly any book has been at the forefront of my mind this year. I've been like, what are books? I don't know.
But this is a different take on a queer story told. It's the story of 2 queer slaves who meet each other very young and are in a relationship on a plantation, and how their relationship really affects everyone around them, and how that all comes to be. It is heart-wrenching. I mean, Robert Jones Jr. does not shy away from the atrocities that are slavery. And it fluctuates from many different points of view throughout it, which I thought really worked in a lot of sections. I didn't totally connect when it would flip to sort of like the white plantation slave owner point of view. I didn't find that as engaging as the rest of the viewpoints. But in the end, when this book ended, I was like bawling my eyes out. So
yeah. I do think, I will say that I don't think it's like the most, it's one of those books where I really liked it, but I think maybe I'm like just so critical because I see like how great it is that like I almost want just those last little like kind of refinements to kind of like
yeah.
But I do, it's still like a 5-star read for me. I still think
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a phenomenal debut novel. Like this is the first book that Robert has put out in the world. Is amazing, and he and his style are adorable. I love to follow him. I love to hear him talk. So I really do. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad maybe more people will read it.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what he does next. So.
Oh yeah, and that's, I will say that like it is. I think that he's going to be one of those people who has a very exciting breadth of work over the coming years.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so I think this one I don't know if you said it on this call or before when we were chatting, but you've read this one twice, right? Intimacies by Katie Kitamura.
I am okay. So yes, so I was obsessed. I read her book A Separation back when it came out. Thought it was great. I think this is even better. This is, listen, I'm gonna be I'm gonna be probably praising this so much it's gonna annoy people, but I love when a book is like I did not emotionally connect that much with this book, and I don't really think that you're supposed to, but this is one of those books where every single sentence counts and is so like well crafted, but it's also it's well crafted on a sentence level, a paragraph level, a page level, a chapter level. Like every single piece is like so perfectly put together. It is so impressive, and I want people to understand this is a brilliant book by a brilliant author, and I love it.
Anyway. So the story is of a young woman who is starting or has just started a career as an interpreter at the Hague, and all that goes with that. It's also about her trying to find a place in the Hague. She has this romance with this man who is just sort of still married, not married sort of thing, and her relationships with people that she's meeting, and also sort of this underlying political tension of what the Hague is for. And all of that. I too thought this book was brilliant, like totally bought into it. I tried to read The Separation a couple of times, but it was just one of those books that I didn't connect with, and not for any fault of hers. I just don't think that it was a book for me. But when I finished this, I was just like, this book should be read by everybody as like a perfect example of what you can do with so little that is so much.
Like, I want to read I would love to read short stories by her because I would love to see what she'd do with them.
Yeah. And her character development in such a way, like you don't realizing you're getting to know this woman until like 30 pages in, you're like, you fully understand her in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good book. I'm really glad to see it here because I had sort of thought, I didn't love A Separation. Maybe I'll pass it by. I devoured it.
That's I both times I read it in one sitting. So
it's that kind of book. You definitely can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, now this is the other book, Hunter, that was not on my radar in the slightest. I had not heard of it. I knew nothing about it, and that is Hell of a Book by Jason Mott.
Which is so it's literally a read with Jenna pick. I don't know how I missed this.
This is, I have started this one. Have you read this one, or have you read anything by Jason Mott before?
No.
So I learned in doing a little research on him, he wrote a book called The Returned, which was a TV show for 2 seasons. So he did fairly well. And this book is told from the perspective of two different characters. One is a young Black boy who is teased by his, the other Black students for the color of his skin, and who his parents have sort of ingrained in him that if he concentrates enough, he can become invisible and be unseen and safe. And then the other part of the book is from the point of view of a young, current Black author who is on book tour for a novel that he wrote called Hell of a Book. And sort of he makes some interesting choices. And then all of a sudden, this young kid just pops up on his book tour. And he doesn't know where he's from, who he is really, but the kid just says to him, I wanted you to see me. And how that all comes together.
I mean, I'm here for there's oh gosh, I can't remember her name. There's an author I follow on Twitter who said was like, it truly is a hell of a book. Like, you've got to read it. I am very excited about this one just because I love a book that's not on my radar.
Yeah. Well, I've already started about 100 pages in and I'm absolutely loving it. And this is the one that Charles Yu blurbed already. Yeah. And Kiese Lehmann, who I love, also blurbed it. So I know that it's like in that zone for me. But I didn't know what to expect. And so far, I'm absolutely, absolutely loving it. So yeah, hell of a book. Jason Mott, the one book that I was like, where did that book come from? I had never heard of it. So, oh goodness. And this was the other surprise for me, Hunter. Only one short story collection this year.
Yeah, that is, it's so funny, right? Because like I think like we talked about this last year. Because how many were on there last year?
There were at least two. Because there was the Secret Lives of Church Ladies.
That's right. Oh, and there's that one by that guy who died.
Is that this year, you mean? Are you talking about After Parties?
No, last year that there was a short story collection.
Oh yeah, you're right. The guy from North Carolina.
Between Two Wings or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. There was that, and there may have been a third too.
I feel like there was a third, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. But this year it's Elizabeth McCracken and her book, The Souvenir Museum. And this is out from Ecco, which I always support Ecco because they've always been really kind to me and they produce phenomenal books. All of these publishers have been kind to me and to you and produce phenomenal books. But I devoured this collection. I read it in probably half a day.
Okay.
It deals with loss. It deals with family. It deals with memory. It deals with what do you do next. There's some interconnected short stories about a young couple who are not married and sort of they go to visit someone for a wedding, and then we sort of find out more about them and other stories. Mm-hmm. But I flew through this book and these stories. It's really, really good.
I am very excited for this partly because I wanted to read Bolaway, which was
her last book, right?
Yeah. Did not read it because I'm a hoe. But I always love a short story collection. I love a short story collection that has not been on my radar. I mean, I like anytime I hear about something that I haven't heard about that I'm like, oh, good. And obviously, like I said, I don't know what anything's ever about, but I like the cover, so I'm sold.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, I think you're going to really like it just because I know how short story driven you are as a reader. And I think you are going to see some really clever work done. And anyone that can get me to buy into a character in 20 pages definitely gets like a mark in my book, because that's the hardest part of a short story collection for me. The second story, Proof, about a young man who takes his elderly father to Ireland, I believe, for the first time, or Scotland, I can't remember, after his mom passed away, broke my heart. It's so good.
Okay.
So good.
I'm excited.
So that's The Souvenir Museum by Elizabeth McCracken. And last but not least is our second Pulitzer winner.
Yeah.
Bewilderment by Richard Powers. He is shortlisted for the Booker, longlisted for the National Book Award. Very Shuggie Bain from last year. Shuggie Bain went to win the Booker, so it'll be interesting. Confession, Hunter. I own all of Richard Powers' books. I have read half of many of them. I have not finished hardly any.
I have not, like, I own several. I have not read one. I have not even read a page of one.
Oh, goodness. Well, I don't know what it is. I always am interested in what he's going to write about. The Overstory was just too much for me, but I have tried others and I just never get them finished. I don't know what that is.
Did you see the pan that like just like Dwight Garner, I think, wrote that just scathing review in the New York Times for this one?
I heard about it. I don't want to read it until after I read the book.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the story of a father and son as well. I feel like that's a theme, like children and their parents. But the father is an astrobiologist and the son is 9 years old, and his wife has passed. He's raising a son by himself, and his son is a very unique kid, but he's also gets into trouble because he hits someone in the face in the 3rd grade, and he's trying to figure out how to help his son. Unique methods to do that. And I've heard some people just love this book.
Yeah. I've heard it's much more digestible than the Overstory. So, yeah.
So I wonder if it'll be his year to win like the Booker, but not win the NBA again.
Gene, so not to be like not to be that person, but somebody actually said they excuse me, I can't remember who it was. Somebody said, do you think Bewilderment and Cloud Cuckoo Land will both be on the long list? And I said, I was like, no, I don't think they're gonna have 2 white guys who write like fine books, but are just like not really saying, like, I mean, I know that's like just generalizing, but I was like, like most of these people are writing the same stuff over and over again. Not to like go after anyone. I know people are very sensitive about their books. I learned that last year. But like, but yeah, I was very surprised to see both of these, especially this one, just because I don't know. It's so funny. I say this as a person who literally, Lauren Groff has been on the list the past, 2 times she's had a book out, and I've been like, she deserves it. And then Richard Howard's, he's on this, and I'm like, how dare he? He's already been here before.
Clearly Richard Powers speaks to writers. That's what I have taken away from it, is that, or people who think a certain way about literature.
Yeah.
I think Richard Power, I am surprised Cloud Cuckoo Land is on the list, not in a way that I'm not happy, because I really liked it. It just doesn't seem like an MBA book for me. Yeah. But I agree. I don't think both will make the short list. I don't know that that's going to possibly happen.
No.
So
I speak with such confidence as a person who's always wrong. It's fine. Yeah, I'm intrigued, but we'll see.
So there are 10 books here. Do you think that there's an early front runner?
Okay, like I have not read all these, but I will just go ahead and say that 2 of the books that I've read are they're ones that I just would love to see, and I hope both make the short list, which are Intimacies and Matrix. I think they're both just superbly written, and I think that, like, I don't know. I'm thinking. I don't know enough about these to really speak on them, but from what I've read, I just think I will say this. I actually think Intimacies might be the one that could take it for me.
I do think I still have 3 to read, or 3.5 or 4 or whatever. But I do think, just if I go by sort of like the power behind it, the momentum, I do think the love songs of W.E. Du Bois has a lot of momentum right now. Yeah. People are talking about this book and people adore it. And the NBA tends to like one of those big sweeping American sagas that, takes us to task for our past, but gives us hope of the future, sort of thing.
Yeah. Do you just a weird random question. Do you think that a book like The Great Offshore Grounds would have won if it had had more momentum behind it early on?
I'm not sure. I think there's also something to be said for the NBA also likes someone to take a risk in their writing. And, Jesmyn Ward always has sort of that magical realism aspect, or which so did Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad, and Charles Yu, his was a very unique vision. The Great Offshore Grounds, which I loved, was a more straightforward narrative. And I think that sometimes that may hold it back when it comes to getting these awards. So that's why I think Patricia Lockwood's book may win the Booker Prize. Even though that book doesn't speak to me, I recognize it does something that's never been done in literature before. And prizes like to award that sort of stuff.
I would like to make a comment about, so I will say, I completely understand why the book doesn't work for a lot of people. I was a big fan of that book, and I hope it wins, partly at this point just because people hate that book with a passion. And I'm
it's
like,
very polarizing.
It is, but to me, that's what makes it, I don't know. I love a book that just divides people. I'm like, yes, let's create division in the world. I mean, in the reading world.
Yes, I will say, this is not a video about the Booker, so stop. But I will say I read The Promise by Damon Galgut, and it is phenomenal.
I got a copy of that one because Bernie Lombardi, a bookstagrammer on Instagram, he said, he was like, it is the book I want to win. It's very good. You have to read it. So I got a copy.
Yes, no, and I hope you love it as much as I did. And Damon Galgut has been up. This is his third time on the short list. So it will be interesting to see. But yeah, no, the Booker Prize, another video for another day. Okay, well, Hunter and I will, hopefully, he will agree to come back so we can talk about it after we've had a chance to read it and pick our shortlist choices. Yeah. And we will do that video and see which ones we think will make the shortlist. And then we will have a reaction to the shortlist and pick a winner before that. So you'll get to see Hunter 2 more times. Well, Hunter, thank you so much for coming and talking books with me. I always appreciate your opinion.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And until next time, everybody, Hunter and I wish you happy reading, and we'll see you later. Bye.